And Anna, I'm going to go live now and give the introduction. All right, welcome everyone. This is Julia O'Hara, the Assistant Director for Communications with Housing and Residential Education, and I am here with Anna Hernandez, the Assistant Vice President for Housing and Residential Education, and we are here for another session of Ask Anna. So whether you're joining us on Facebook Live this evening or through the Microsoft Teams event, type in your questions and we will answer you when we have Anna here with us during the event. So before we get started, I did want to give a quick update. I wanted to make the announcement that the One USF Virtual Open House is this Saturday from 10 to 1. The One USF Virtual Open House will include multiple event sessions where you'll be able to get the chance to explore programs, see student resources, or hear firsthand from faculty. This is a really unique event that we usually do in person, but this year we're going to be doing online, and it's held by admissions. And you're able to pick and choose the exact sessions that you would like to attend. So housing will be present. We are a session that's during that event. In addition to being there during a session at this event, we're going to have a bonus session. So if there's something else that you were interested in listening to during our time, or if you just want to know more about living on campus, we'll be doing a follow-up session on Wednesday, October 28th for a full hour, 7 to 8, where we'll have partners throughout all of housing and residential education to talk to you about the on-campus experience. So I'm going to drop all of that information in the announcements, both here on Microsoft Teams and on Facebook. And Anna, while I do that, would you like to give an overview of spring room selection, which we are in the midst of now for current students, and talk about the upcoming new student spring room selection for everybody?
Sure, absolutely. We're very excited to start our spring selection for our new students. So for the last few weeks, we've had an opportunity for returning students to select their rooms for the spring. And then tomorrow, October 21st, is the first day for new students who are ready to be assigned to see what inventory we have available and select their own room. And there are a variety of different types of rooms that are available, whether they be apartments, whether they be residence hall, traditional rooms, or suite style. And we have a little bit of everything for people to enjoy. I'm really pleased. We have over 900 students who have applied to join us in the spring. And we're looking for hundreds more over the course of the next few weeks. So I would encourage people to make sure that they've completed their spring application. So for new students, that would include obviously applying for housing, making sure that you pay your application fee, making sure that you have the appropriate immunizations submitted, and that you've registered for orientation. And so if you complete all of those steps, then you would be eligible to go into the housing portal to see what inventory is available and select your new home for the spring. So we're really excited about that, and are excited to welcome everybody into the Bowles family.
Great. Thank you, Anna. And we have our first question from a viewer. Is there a deposit to book a space?
So we don't have deposits, but there is a $50 non-refundable application fee. But then when a student selects a room, there isn't any additional deposit for housing. Obviously, there's the admissions deposit, the commitment that would need to be paid, but for housing, there isn't an additional deposit.
Thank you. And just for anybody that isn't aware, just joining us, what steps do students need to complete to select their room?
So the first is to go to housing@usf.edu and submit a student housing agreement. Then to pay the $50 non-refundable application fee. Then for new students that are coming in the spring that haven't been a USF student before, register for orientation and make sure that they have their immunizations complete. For students that are returning to USF, so an existing USF student that perhaps is at home or perhaps is living somewhere else and has decided to live on campus, as soon as they submit their application and their application fee, then they would be eligible to select their room right away.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And Anna, when does the summer, I know that people are looking forward to the application process for summer 2021 and fall spring 21-22, if you can believe that we're already hard at work planning for those terms. Do we have an idea of about when people can anticipate seeing those housing applications become live in the housing portal?
Yes, so for new students for the fall semester, the first opportunity that they would have to apply for housing would be when they receive their admissions notification. And so we try to align with that information from admissions. And so we're anticipating that the housing applications will be live in mid-November. And that will be the same timing that we have for summer, since our first time in college students can either be admitted for the summer or for the fall, and usually those notifications go out around the same time. So students should look for that becoming available then. Now they go through the application process, which is similar to what I described for the spring, is that they would apply for housing, they would pay their non-refundable $50 application fee, and then when orientation sessions become available for selection, then students would apply for that, and then they would make sure that they have submitted their immunizations. It's after all of those things are completed that new students would be able to select their rooms, and usually that doesn't happen until into the spring semester, usually in March. The returning students, so students who currently live with us, and or students who are currently coming to USF and taking classes at USF, usually the room selection process happens in February. So we'll release all of the details in the spring with regard to the timing of all of that. But applications for the fall and for summer 2021 should be available in mid-November.
Great, thank you for that, Anna.
Sure.
And thank you for Alyssa for the question that just came in. If a student signed a fall spring agreement but wants to change rooms, what is the process with that?
So we're having a lot of the new students that we're needing to accommodate, and so moving folks around gets a little complicated for us. What we are committed to doing is we have some situations where we had students who were going to be roommates in the fall, and then maybe one decided that they were going to live on campus and one decided to stay home. We will do our best to try to get those people back together for the spring semester. Can't guarantee it'll be in the same room that the fall student is in. But what I would say is that those two individuals should make sure that it's a mutual request and then email housing@usf.edu, and we'll try to work with them to bring them together. If there is some sort of extenuating circumstance that has a student that is currently living with us that wants to change rooms to a different building or a different room type, it gets a little more complicated. It's not that it can't be done, but what it would require is a student would need to move out of their fall assignment completely and then sort of move back in almost like a new student in the spring. That is not what usually needs to happen, right? A student who has a fall spring contract will be able to keep their belongings over the winter break in their existing space because they're coming right back to the space. But if it is that there's a room change that happens, then we need to be able to go into the old room or the fall room and turn that space, clean that space, prepare it for the new resident. And so that's why we aren't able to have somebody stay in their space and then when they come back for the spring, move right into a spring assignment. So it takes a little bit of coordination, but we want people to find the best home for them, the best thing that suits their academic success, their personal success, their personal preferences. And so I would ask people to reach out at housing@usf.edu, sort of explain what you're trying to do, if you're trying to get together with other people. If it is that you're requesting a super single, we may be able to still accommodate that as well. So just let us know, and we'll try to help you through the process.
Thank you, Anna. That makes sense. And, on that note, with all of the protocol and the actions that are in place in the halls to keep everyone safe and healthy, can you talk a little bit about the environmental testing that is being conducted on campus? When you talk about that, I'll also pull the link from the article that was highlighted by the University Communications. If you want to just give a little bit of an overview for those that are watching and that might hear about it through any potential emails in the future.
Sure. So environmental testing is just one of the strategies that we utilize to identify the possible presence of the virus on campus. And so what environmental testing is that there is basically, we're testing surfaces, high touch surfaces usually, door handles, elevator buttons, common area tables, microwave buttons, faucets, those types of things. And so what we do is, and I actually have my show and tell, is we take one of these swabs that we get, which basically has a sponge on the end, and we wipe this on the various surfaces that we want to test. Then what we do is we send this to the lab, and they are able to detect whether or not there's the presence of the virus on the sample that we submit. If it is that the presence of the virus is detected, then we would reach out to students who may have accessed that area. So say if it's found on a particular floor in a residence hall, then we would contact the students that are on that floor, bring them in for testing, nasal swabs or a pool testing, saliva sample. Usually we're doing the nasal swabs now. To see if there's anybody that is perhaps asymptomatic, so they don't know that they're carrying the virus. And then we test them, we get those results back. And if it is that we find somebody that tests positive, then we implement our isolation protocol. So the environmental testing is just one mitigation strategy that we have to try to identify where we have the virus present. So we also do random testing. So faculty, staff, students randomly are selected. Every week there is a different group that is selected, and they would go in for testing to see if they may be asymptomatic and have tested positive. We also do our daily symptom tracker, which all faculty, students, and staff who are expecting to be on campus every day, there's a very brief questionnaire that asks them if they're planning on coming to campus, if they have tested positive, if they know that they have been around somebody that has tested positive, and asks them whether they're feeling well that day. And so if any of the answers to those questions causes some concern or alarm, then the app would tell the student, faculty, or staff member not to come to campus until they're cleared by a medical professional. Then somebody would reach out to them from Student Health Services, ask a few more questions to understand what their circumstances are, and then make a determination whether or not they should be tested or whether they could be cleared to come to campus. So between the environmental testing, the random testing, the daily symptom tracker, and then also Student Health Services just being available if people aren't feeling well, that they can go in and have medical treatment. All of those help us identify the virus presence early and care for the students and the community the best we can.
Thank you, Anna. I love the show and tell every time you bring something to show. So another question that we have from Lynn, thank you, Lynn. Any idea if and when study rooms and common spaces will be opened in the spring semester? And Lynn's asking about specifically in the village. My son would like to have access to quiet study rooms to attend online classes, but they're still closed. And then asking about potentially limited occupancy in those spaces. So in your response, if you'd like to maybe give some insight into why those are closed and potentially when the decision would be made to open those back up again.
Sure, sure. And I certainly understand the desire to have those spaces available. And that is going to be our focus. Once we are able to safely open those spaces for student use, we are going to be focused on how is it that we can use those spaces to support students' academic needs. And so having quiet study space, having space potentially outside of a residence hall room where a student may need to do complete an exam or something to that effect. And so we're working very closely with Student Health Services as well as our COVID team on campus, our public health professionals, to determine when it is that it would be appropriate for us to be able to open those spaces up. We're keeping an eye on what is happening with regard to the prevalence rate and the positivity rate on campus and in the community, and really just trying to be cautious. We have very few people that are in isolation right now, and I think that is the combination of students' cooperation as well as the mitigation measures that we have in place. So we want to be really cautious about opening up. But I understand that is certainly a desire, and we're hoping that that's something that we're going to be able to open up in the spring. But we're waiting and following CDC guidelines, following the guidance of the health professionals on campus. So, but please know that is what we would like to be able to do, even if it is large rooms that are restricted or on a reservation basis or something like that. We're trying to develop those options so that students have some space that they can gather outside of their residence hall room, and certainly the needs that support their academic success. I do want to mention, in the meantime, there are spaces that are available by reservation in the USF library, both on the Tampa campus as well as on the St. Petersburg campus. And there are also spaces in the Marshall Student Center that can be reserved. And so that may be an option if your student is looking for something for this semester for them to explore and make sure that they're aware of those options that may be available for them.
Thank you. It's a great point, Anna. And then another question that came in from a viewer. Thank you, Jamie. This question is specifically, it goes along with the topic you were just on, but this is specifically about events. Jamie is suggesting that the RA programs, bringing those back non-virtually to the floors or pods to make it a smaller gathering, if that would be something that housing would consider. So I guess the two-part question here, what will events look like potentially in the spring for, as we know right now? And then in addition to that, I think it'd be great to talk about the opportunities that are available on Bulls in the Cloud if you wanted to give a quick overview of that as well.
Sure, and I do want to acknowledge, I am going to talk a little bit about Bulls in the Cloud, but I do want to acknowledge that the question is specifically about non-virtual opportunities for community building. And so, one of the things that we are trying to do is to figure out how to roll this out. And so I think it's going to be slowly as we get guidance in this process. So just as I said, trying to utilize the space differently is also how is it that we may be able to support smaller gatherings and the like. That's not where we are right now, and so we're still in the virtual community building area. I do see students that are walking outside, right, which is safer. They're still keeping their 6 feet distance and they're still wearing their masks. And so I appreciate that. But trying to figure out, are there things that people can be doing outside that may be safe for them to make those connections? My office happens to be in the Village. And so I will tell you all hours of the day and night, I see people that are skateboarding in and around the community. I see folks that are we have students who are laying in hammocks that are strung between some of our palm trees, and so they're trying to maintain their physical distance, but still at least have that visual connection with folks. And I know that even going to the dining hall and seeing other students around sometimes breaks up that monotony of being on the screen and having that screen time. And so, ways that we are able to be able to safely do that. It may start with some outside activities first, and then go from there. So, it's hard to tell. We're trying to keep students safe and also try to create the best community that we are able to. And so we look for opportunities as to how it is that we may be able to start expanding the opportunities for students to connect in person. I think that that the campus recreation facility is open, and while that is all socially distanced and masked, sometimes that's a good way to get together, to at least go and be doing something at the same time with somebody else. You may just be walking on a treadmill next to each other, but sometimes that helps as well. But I wanted to acknowledge that I understand that virtual connections and in-person connections are not the same. But I do want to be able to talk a little bit about how we are trying to keep those communities going and build those communities while we do have some social distant restrictions that we're needing to follow. And so there are several things that the residential education staff are sponsoring in the halls, trying to connect to different students that may have different interests. So I'm going to go through a couple, if that's okay, Julia, to describe some of those events, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's my next question. And right now, when we don't have any questions from the audience, it'd be a great opportunity to go over that. I do want to just remind anyone tuning in on Facebook or Teams, please ask us your questions. We're here for you to answer them. You can type them in the comments of the Facebook video that you see if you're on Facebook, or in the question sticker here on Teams. So be sure to send in your questions. But until then, until we get some more, and if you want to give an overview of what are in the weeks ahead on Bulls in the Cloud, that would be great.
Sure. So I just went on the Bulls in the Cloud website, which is in Canvas, and all residential students have access to that. It's like a course similar to their academic courses. Obviously, it's not graded, so it's voluntary. But we have over 10,000 student visits to that site, and so it's a very active site. And as you know, we have a very broad residential community. So different buildings do different things, different staff do different things. And the variety that is available is really impressive, I think. So just this week, so I'm going to see if I can share with you some of them. So this week is actually National Transfer Week. And so there are a variety of activities that the campus is providing to try to help transfer students connect, because that's a little bit of a different experience. And so there are several virtual events that are available there. We try to make sure that we have something that is focused on academic success that is available every week. And so we have an academic success power hour that is designed to be a networking opportunity specifically for our male students to make those connections. This week, they're learning about the resident assistant and the community manager positions. They have an opportunity to connect with faculty, learning about career readiness and academic success skills. And so that is something that is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. And that's a Teams meeting that all students are eligible to take part of. There is a Bulls in the Cloud event on the 22nd at 6 p.m., which is called Love is Tinder. And so that would be a collaboration between our residential education staff as well as our Center for Violence Prevention. And so trying to understand relationships and what that looks like in a virtual world and what it looks like on a college campus. And so so I encourage people to get in touch with that. Then So we've done the academic, we've sort of done the personal development. There is also a Call of Duty Warzone tournament that is happening, and that's on Thursday at 8 o'clock on Teams. And so, there seems to be a little bit of everything that's available. So the campus is hosting an interactive major exploration event. And so that is going to be over the course of the 21st. So that'll be tomorrow as well. There are 7 different panels throughout the day, talking to students, faculty, staff in a variety of majors, employers, what they may be looking for from students coming out of different majors, et cetera. And so if you're thinking about your major, you're not sure what your major is going to be, or you've taken some classes and you're not sure that the major that you've selected is the right fit, this is a great opportunity to just explore and get some more information that's available. And then finally, there is a podcast that is hosted by the residential education staff, and they have guests. I think they do it every week or every other week, and then they just talk about various topics, and those broadcasts or podcasts are available on Spotify. And so the one that they just posted was about breaking down barriers and social isolation. And it just has people talking, students and staff talking about what they're experiencing, how it is that this is impacting their residential experience, their USF experience, talking about ways that not only are they connecting with people on campus, but how are they connecting with people back home? And so instead of one of the students had said, they're making a concerted effort that instead of just texting friends or texting family, they're actually doing FaceTime so that they can visually see each other, probably Zoom calls, Teams calls, et cetera. So, and people are talking about things that they're struggling with and things that they have found some success in. And so I think that that's a great opportunity for students to hear from students so that they don't feel like they're alone and they're the only one that is facing some of the challenges of living in a virtual environment. So I just, I said it last time and I will continue to say it, the Bulls in the Cloud program I think is great, and I would encourage people to make those connections, because those connections that they make virtually may then translate into, so do you want to go to the dining hall together? Or how about we go over to the library together? And sometimes just walking across campus with somebody else is a great way to break down some barriers and try to address some isolation or loneliness that people may feel on campus.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anna. And a great suggestion by Melinda here that, and if this isn't something that residential education is currently doing, it might be worth, us connecting and seeing if this is an option for a student that has evening classes, potentially having those sessions recorded for them to be able to go back and learn about those resources. So I'm not sure if that's something that is happening, but I do believe that it's possible, especially with everything over Teams. You can record a session very easily. So Melinda, thank you for bringing that up. That'll be something that I touch base with that team and see if that's something that is currently an opportunity for students that can't make it to a session.
And I do believe that that whenever possible, they do try to record those sessions so that the links are available for folks to join afterwards, because we understand whether it is that students are working, students have classes, or students have another opportunity that they're taking advantage of, we don't want them to miss out on the resources. And so there's a whole resources section of the Bulls in the Cloud Canvas site. And so I would encourage people to go into the resources section to just maybe see some of the archives that are available.
Absolutely. And Destiny is asking, thank you, Destiny, for your question. Will more housing spots be opening tomorrow for new students? So that is a great question about spring room selection for new students coming in for the spring term. Anna, do you want to give a quick overview of what our occupancy may look like for someone with options wise? I'm not sure if you have a lot of that information in front of you, but just in terms of what options may be available for someone that will be logging in tomorrow to make their selection.
Sure. I don't know that there will be new options that are open tomorrow that weren't open to returning students today, but we have all different types of spaces that are available on campus. It may not be the specific room that you're looking for, et cetera, but I would say go into the system, see what's available. If you don't see something that you're looking for, please feel free to reach out to us, because it may just be that the room is being held as a, we basically fill up the half empty rooms so that we have completely empty rooms that are available in case we need to get two people together. And so it may just be a matter of you are trying to get together with a roommate and you only see single spaces, like one space in a double that's available. If you are trying to get together and that's the issue, please feel free to reach out, because again, we're trying to help students find the home that they want for the spring semester. And so if there's something specific, then we can let you know that. The other thing is that we will have students that are graduating in the fall. We don't know who they are yet. So there are always spaces that do become available later in the semester. And so if you're looking for something specific and we're not able to accommodate that when you reach back out to us, then we can tell you to basically keep looking, and we can always move you from sort of pre-occupancy. If you select you're a new student coming in the spring, you select one room, and then a couple of weeks later you see that a different room has come open, you can cancel out that one room and switch to the other. So you're able to make some of those movements. But if you want to make sure that you have secured a room for the spring, then I would encourage you to go in and select from the best options that are available right now. But please, again, reach out to housing@usf.edu. Tell us what you're trying to do, and we'll have somebody reach out and help you navigate the process.
Thank you. And a follow-up question: is there a wait list for a wait list that you can join if we don't get our first choice?
So there is not a waiting list because it is on a first come, first serve basis. So basically, students have the option to select a room and to switch rooms. And so the waiting list is basically managed on their own, right? So when a space comes open, then they can go ahead and select that. But we don't have a waiting list process, or we don't have a waiting list that we are managing, because students have the ability to select any of the spaces as they open up. At the end of the semester, the opportunity for students to select rooms will close, and then if it is a student has not selected a room, we'll reach out and see if there are preferences that they would like to have us consider. We would encourage people to respond back to us, and then as spaces become available, then we would go ahead and do those assignments over the course of December. While the university is still open, so that we can continue to do assignments once it is the self-selection process has closed. So, but right now I would say go in, try to find your space, and reach out to one of the housing assignment staff members. Make an appointment. They would be happy to do a Teams call with you, walk you through the process, help you go through the portal so that you understand how to find spaces, those kinds of things. So utilize those resources that are available.
Thank you, Anna. A question from a viewer is asking about cancellations for a current fall-spring agreement. What is the process if they were to request a cancellation for the remainder of their spring portion of their agreement?
So the student housing agreements are from the fall through May, through the end of the spring term. If it is that a student would like to cancel their contract, they're no longer going to be coming to school here, or whatever their situation is, then what they would do is to go into the housing portal and request a contract or a student housing agreement cancellation. That request will then be reviewed, and it may or may not be approved. So there are different criteria for different types of spaces, and there are different cancellation fees depending on what the timing is, what the student's circumstances are. So if a student is currently living with us, then it's not necessarily guaranteed that their contract would be canceled, and so I would have them reach out to us again, and we can let them know what the specific circumstances are. If there's a new student that has applied and has not yet been assigned a space or has not yet selected a space, they would be able to go in and cancel their application, and there wouldn't be any cancellation penalty other than their $50 application fee, which is non-refundable. But the housing portal is really where the information about the cancellation request process happens. And so that's where I would direct students. But again, if they want to talk that through as to, maybe it is that they don't need to cancel, maybe it is that they just are looking to go to maybe a less expensive space, or they want to go from one side of campus to another side of campus. I'd love to have the opportunity to work with those students and try to find a space that may fit their needs a little bit better.
Great, thank you, Anna. And we have two questions that are great questions from both Jamie and Lynn that are on the same page here. Jamie is asking if there is any additional cost for students to stay in their fall room through December 11th, when the agreement for the fall term, when rooms close. And then Lynn is also asking about rooms being open during spring break, and if there's any specific break housing for residence halls during spring break.
Okay. So I'm going to answer the second one first. So spring break, the residence halls remain open during spring break, similar to Thanksgiving break. We don't close during those break periods, and that time frame is included in the student housing agreement. So there's no additional charge for that. For winter break, the student housing agreement covers the time until the end of the semester, so until December 11th, and then we reopen on January 9th. If it is that there's a student that is living in one of the buildings that is open for the winter break, and I can tell you which buildings those are, then the student would need to request what we call break housing. And there is an additional fee for break housing. It is the nightly rate for the space that the student is in. And so students would sign up for that, and then the winter break housing is a block. So basically, if they need to stay anytime between December 11th and January 9th, then they would sign up for break housing. They would be charged for the full break housing amount. Now, there are only limited spaces that are available for winter break housing, and that is done for safety and security reasons, so that we don't have a few students sort of scattered throughout the campus, as well as making sure that we can focus on having staff in those particular buildings. And so the residents of these particular communities are eligible for the break housing. That would be Holly Apartments, Horizon Hall, which is one of the residence halls in the village, Magnolia Apartments, and Poplar Hall, which is one of the residence halls that is on the south side of campus. And so if students live in Holly, Horizon, Magnolia, or Poplar, they can request to stay over the winter break period, which is, again, December 11th through January 9th. And the deadline to submit a break stay form, which is what we call that request process, is going to be Wednesday, December 2nd at 4 p.m. So what that does is it allows us to understand who it is that's going to be on campus, and that also helps our dining colleagues so that they know how many students are going to be on campus, because dining does remain open, so that there are dining options that are available for students who are staying on campus. And that includes the university will be closed for the period between December 31st and January 3rd for our winter break. And so, but dining remains open, and these winter break housing spaces will remain open for them. And there will be, or I don't know if it's posted yet, but there's a winter break website that will be part of the housing web pages where students can get more information about that.
Yes, correct. So by the end of the week, we will have a closing web page that we'll share on our Facebook page and will be emailed to current residents as well. And that includes all of the information for residents interested in staying for break stay and closing information in general for those that are leaving on December 11th or before that, if they prefer.
And Julia, I just want to add on, because I should have mentioned this in the buildings that are open. So the Greek Village is on a different contract schedule. And so for the Greek Village, we're going to ask the students to let us know who it is that's planning on staying. But because that time period is included in their student housing agreement period, there is no additional fee for students who are staying in the Greek Village that are part of those communities.
Thank you for that clarification, Anna. And a follow-up question for relating to break stay. A viewer is asking if there are any chance that rooms will open before January 9th. And I would just add the potential for early arrivals. I'm not sure what exactly the details are about this spring for early arrivals, but that may be an option. If we do not open earlier than January 9th, then there is a need to move on to campus earlier than that.
So we are still trying to finalize the details about arrival and reopening in the spring. And so until I know what that looks like, I'm unfortunately not able to give you a firm answer on the early arrival options that may be available. Depending on the number of new students that we have that may be arriving in the spring, we may need to do a staggered arrival, which means that we would need to open before January 9th. So maybe just a few days before January 9th and implement an appointment system for student arrival. We're trying to work through the details. As you might imagine, the state of COVID and what's happening on campus, in our county, in our state, in the nation is going to be informing that. And so we're trying to make some contingency plans as to what that may look like. If I may, I want to talk a little bit about spring and testing. Is this okay to talk about this now, Julia?
Yeah, that's the next question. Someone is asking if COVID testing will be required for spring.
Sure. So what I know at this point is that we're not going to be requiring students to get their own test before they arrive on campus and submit that. It's just not practical with the length of time, the possible exposures while people are at home, getting tests and being able to submit them. And have somebody that is on the USF side that can process them in a timely way. So the protocol that we had in the fall is not going to be the same protocol that we had in the spring. However, one of the things that we're looking at is the ability to have some sort of rapid testing that would be available on campus, on site, before students move into the residence halls or shortly thereafter. And so we're working through the logistics, trying to secure the testing that we would need to implement something like that. And so we're still working with Student Health Services and Public Health on what that model will look like for us. But I know that we won't be asking people to test themselves before they arrive. And I know that there will be some sort of testing that will be happening on campus. It's just that we're still working through what the details of that may look like for us.
Great, thank you, Anna. And then Daisy has a question relating to the to moving for the winter break, moving out December 11th. My son signed for fall spring agreement. Does he have to move all his furniture on December 12th? He chooses He chose to keep the same room for both terms. So it sounds like this student is not moving rooms. So what does the move out process look like for them?
So that is the perfect process because the student is able to take whatever they need to sustain themselves, whatever it is that they're looking for. We recommend that they take their computers, their chargers, all of those kinds of things home with them or wherever they are going to spend their winter break. But there is no need for them to move out of their space. When they come back in January, they just move right back into their space. We turn off card access so that students don't have access into the buildings, but we do not take the keys back. So there isn't a new key reissuance or any of those types of things. What we do ask is that students empty out their refrigerators, defrost them, make sure that all their trash is gone, those kinds of things, just recognizing that they will be away from campus for a month. And so we have a whole list that we provide to students on how it is that they prepare for winter break. We know that there may be some students that actually leave at Thanksgiving time because the week of classes after Thanksgiving is online, and then all of the finals are online. And so we may actually have students that are away from campus for 6 weeks. But in either of those cases, if a student is returning to their room in the spring, there's no need for them to remove their furniture or take any of their personal belongings home that they don't want to take home with them and have access to over the course of the winter break. They will not be able to come back to campus to retrieve something that they forgot. So things that we try to remind students about, again, computers, chargers, medicine, eyeglasses, passports, licenses. Some students think that they can do without their gaming system, and then they realize about a week in that they actually can't go 6 weeks without their gaming system. So if that's something that they may want to bring home, but we want people to bring home only what they think that they need. We don't want to add any additional burden to that transition process from fall to spring.
And Anna, Melinda's asking, will a resident of a current single be informed in advance if a spring roommate is assigned to what's typically a suite bedroom that they're occupying by themselves?
So what students that are currently in singles, so I'm going to say in this example, I think that she may be referring to a student who has not bought out a super single, right? So they haven't
Correct,
purchased the super single. It's just that they're in a double and there isn't somebody else that's living in the other space. So if that's the kind of arrangement that we're talking about, then students are informed. They're informed on a regular basis that unless they buy out the other space, then they're always subject to having somebody move into that space. And so as they move as they move out for the fall semester, if it is that they're not staying for winter break, they will be asked to make sure that the other half of the room is clean and ready to go for a new student to move in, because we don't know when the existing student may be returning from the winter break and the new student moving in. And so we ask for students to make sure that the other half of the room is prepared, and that their half of the room is welcoming, right? So it's all about first impressions as to what somebody may be moving into. If it is that the student wants to know about the particular person that may be moving into the space, the student has the ability to go into the housing portal at any time over the course of the break, and they can see if there's somebody else that's assigned to that space. And if it is that they have indicated that that information can be shared, then they can reach out to them and they can make those connections. But there isn't a specific notification that would go out. We just tell people to assume that they are going to be getting a roommate for the spring semester. If it is that a student wants to preserve that single and they don't want to have a roommate in that space, we may still have the ability to offer a super single for them. So that window has closed, but in extenuating circumstances, if you reach out to housing@usf.edu, we can see if we might be able to work with you.
Thank you, Anna. That answers this viewer's follow-up question. If it's still an option to pay extra for the spring to extend reserving that single space in that room. So thank you for that. And then Destiny is a viewer that is asking if they're able to swap out the desk in an apartment style room with their own desk.
So thank you for that question, Destiny. So here's the answer to that question is you can bring your own desk into the room, but you can't remove university furniture from the room. So you have the ability to bring in your own desk, but then you'll have two desks. So you just need to consider what that looks like with regard to space in the particular room and how you may want to set your room up. Hopefully being cognizant if it's a shared space, not to crowd out the other side and your roommate's space as well. So yes, you can bring your own desk. Yes, you can bring your own chair, but you wouldn't be able to remove university furniture from the room.
Thank you. Destiny's also asking about an ID card question that we may need to provide the link to ask this question directly to the ID card center. If they've completed the ID card submission and paid the fee, can they go pick up the ID card now? I'm not sure if you know the answer to that question, Anna, or if we should provide the link directly for Destiny to reach out to the ID card center.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the answer to that is, and I'm not sure whether they can pick it up this early. So I'm assuming that Destiny may be a new incoming spring student, and so I'm not sure whether they issue spring IDs this early, but the ID card center would be the best place to get the most accurate information.
Perfect, and we'll make sure that we drop that link for you, Destiny, for you to get the contact information for that team. And then another question we have for you, Anna, is, and this is one of the last questions that we have gotten in, and then we'll be able to move on to some more announcements before we wrap up this evening. A dining question for you. Do you know if more dining halls and Starbucks will be open in the spring?
So Starbucks is open. There's a Starbucks that is in the village that's open. I actually got a hot chocolate from there this morning. So I know that they are open, and we only have 3 dining halls that are on campus. Juniper Poplar, Argos Exchange, and the Hub, and all 3 of them are open now, and they should be open, or they will be open in the spring as well. The hours of operation may be modified. I'm sorry, I misspoke. So we have another dining hall, Champions Choice, that is on campus. I'm not sure what the hours are for Champions Choice, so I may need to be corrected on that one. But the 3 residential dining halls are open and will be open in the spring. The hours of operation may be adjusted, and a lot of that has to do with the service hours of the building that the dining location is housed in. But this is a great opportunity for me to give a plug for one of our announcements. And so immediately following us, and so hopefully we may actually have people dropping off quickly, at 7 o'clock tonight, Dining Services is hosting a Zoom meeting for, I think it's from 7 to 8. And I think Julia has the information, and we'll drop it into the chat with regard to the meeting ID and the password for the Zoom meeting. And so USF Dining Services is going to be available for the next hour to answer any questions that you may have about dining, as they're the experts in that. So they probably know a little bit more about their specific schedule. And so I would encourage you to jump from this call over to that call when we wrap up.
Thank you, Anna. I'm dropping that into the Teams chat right now, as well as Facebook. I did want to just point out that there are some comments saying that I did remember the Juniper Poplar Starbucks is currently closed. So I believe that the viewer may be talking about that one. And Champions Choice looks like it is closed for the fall semester as well. So like Anna said, if you have specific questions about dining and what's open and options for next semester, The information that we're dropping here in the comments is a great opportunity for you to go and speak with the dining experts. So I'm dropping that in now.
Yeah, the Starbucks I was speaking about was the one that's over in Pinnacle. So
yes, no problem. The last question I have for you, Anna, before we jump into the last couple of announcements that we have planned. This is a duplicate question, but just for the viewer that is just now joining us, will the common areas be open for the spring?
So again, we are working with our health professionals, public health professionals, COVID team on campus to try to get the spaces open as quickly as we can. It'll probably be a phased approach when we get approval to do so. And the first phase will probably be trying to provide access for students in the building that may need additional space or private space for academic support, study space, and those types of things in some of our multi-purpose rooms. So, you know, we're trying to maintain the success that we've had with mitigating the spread of the virus on campus. And so I don't anticipate that we'll have any changes for the fall semester, but we continue to have those conversations and hopefully we'll be able to open up a bit more in the spring. I just can't guarantee where we're going to be, you know, 3 months from now.
Thank you, Anna. So that is all the questions we got through. Perfect timing from the audience. Thank you everyone so much for all your great questions. We'll be sharing more information about more Q&As with Anna in the future. We'll be releasing that schedule soon. As well, I just did, before you get to your announcements, Anna, I would like to also point out that the One USF Virtual Open House is this Saturday from 10 to 1. A lot of great partners that are going to be speaking through sessions all about the USF experience. So I highly recommend attending that. The information for that is in both threads if you're watching on Facebook or on Teams. And now, Anna, I will leave the closing and the announcements to you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Julia. So just a couple of things that are going on around campus that either you or if we have families out there, if you can share with your student. So we are really doing a strong push on trying to have everybody that is on campus get a flu shot. And so Student Health Services is offering free flu shots for students, and we're actually bringing them to the residence halls. And so tomorrow there will be free flu shots that will be available in the Juniper Poplar lobby. And that is from 12:30 until 3 p.m. tomorrow, the 21st. And then free flu shots at the hub, which there's an outdoor area here in the village. And same time, 12:30 to 3 on the 28th of October. And then again, they will come back on the 18th of November. So right before Thanksgiving break. And then at Student Health Services, they actually have walk-in appointments on Wednesday from 12:30 to 3 at the Student Health Services Center. So I would encourage people to get their flu shot. I got mine last week and, you know, I feel great. So also, we announced at the last time registration for classes for the spring opens on November 2nd. And so students have already been issued their appointment time. So this is current students have already been issued their appointment time of when they can go in and select their classes. We again encourage people to make sure that they don't have any kind of holds that would prevent their registration when their appointment time comes. So check the balances on their accounts and their eligibility. If they need to make an appointment with an advisor, make sure that they do that just so that their registration process can be as smooth as possible. And then there was another one that I was going to mention.
Clue is on your jacket there.
Oh, yes. So thank you very much. I was like, what was the other one? What's the other one? So I just wanted to let folks know President Corral issued a encouraging message to student, faculty, and staff on Friday for their civic engagement and encouraging everybody to vote. And so we have an early voting site for those who are registered in Hillsborough County here on campus at the College of Education in the TICO Center. When I went this morning, there were virtually no lines, and so it's an easy process. And so we would encourage people to take part and vote. So I just want to encourage people to think about that. And
thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Julia. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with people, and we'll keep showing up as long as students have questions and or families have questions. And so we'll issue the next Ask Anna session probably in a couple of weeks, I think.
Yep, and I'll post that on Facebook for sure, just to let everyone know when to expect it. And we'll be sure to stream that on Facebook as well, because it seems like we have some great engagement on our Facebook page with all of these great questions. So thank you again, Anna, for taking the time to answer all of these questions. And thank you, everyone, for all of your awesome questions and for tuning in. We really appreciate it. I hope you all have a great night and a great week. Thanks, everybody.
Go Bulls.